for a future reference. So if you are not comfortable share the recording, so you can feel free to exit now if you're not comfortable being recorded. But we are so grateful that you're joining us this afternoon to learn more about King County Promise. So I'm going to go ahead and share screen and get this party started. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Daramola, she, her, hers, with the Puget Sound College and Career Network, and you are joining us today to learn more about King County Promise. So first, welcome. I know many of us have been on Zoom virtually for what feels like decades, more like 18 to 19 months. So please mute yourself unless you would like to share a question or comment. You can feel free to leave video on or video off. But we would love if you could introduce yourself in the chat by putting your name, preferred pronouns, and an organization or school or educational entity or group that you're representing this afternoon. So go ahead and do that as we get our day started. See some folks already. Welcome, Rachel. Glad to have you here. Welcome, Jessica. Glad to have you here as well. Welcome, Naveed, and more. So as folks are putting your salutations to one another into the chat, we're just going to go ahead with the rest of our presentation. So first, want to honor and appreciate the lands in which we all are on, and which are native lands. So I'm going to read off the statement that we have shared across the ESD. And I recognize that many other organizations and groups and individuals have different ways of acknowledging the folks who stewarded the lands that we're on today. So this is when we do at the ESD, but also feel free to share at any point some of the acknowledgements that you all may have. So the Puget Sound Educational Service District, shorthand PSCCN, recognizes the way that true reconciliation starts with facing and accepting our past, which is rooted in colonialization, imperialism, and white supremacy, and authentically moving towards honoring the indigenous peoples and lands we occupy. PSCCN and our people acknowledge that the regions we support and occupy are the ancestral territories of the Coast Salish people. And as original stewards of the land, the Coast Salish people are comprised of tribes that span across the Pacific Northwest coast of Turtle Island. ESD also recognizes there are 29 federally recognized tribes in Washington State and 5 tribes not federally recognized. But our service region comprises the tribes of Duwamish, Muckleshoot, Nisqually, Puyallup, Skokomish, Naquami, Stillquamish, Steilacoom, and the Suquamish tribes. Our physical spaces, which are in Renton and other places, are on the traditional lands of the Duwamish tribe, Muckleshoot Indian tribe, and the Puyallup tribe, who have historically lived throughout Black, Cedar, Green, Puyallup, and White River watersheds. And our Renton office sits on the ancestral Duwamish village named Skoalco, which means confluence. ESD recognizes that our federal government has stolen land and broken treaties, especially the treaties of Medicine Creek and Point Elliott. We are committed to creating a racially just education system that educates all students on the colonization and the ultimate resurgence of Indigenous people's traditions and culture, where they continue to be an integral part of today's society. By learning to lead with transformational values and disrupting patterns of white supremacy, PSCSD calls to action the practice of 7th generation thinking and honoring both the people and the land. So thanks for reading along with me that land, people, and water acknowledgement. And if you have other ways of recognizing the lands that we're in, also feel free to put that into the chat. So today, what we are excited to share with you, we being the PSCCN team, is a way to understand the background, vision, strategies, mission, and program model for King County Promise. We also want to take you through the components of King County Promise in our first phase of programming. An opportunity for you to do some talk back with us around components of Promise, including our students, what the student experience would be in Promise, some of the advising elements and intended outcomes, the staffing, what the roles and professional development will look like for staff, and then systems, what's happening for data, the tracking, partnership requirement, and program outcomes. And then you get a chance to learn about the Promise-related dates and touch points that are coming up, including preparation for phase 1, and then our Promise launch timeline. So I've said we a lot, not the French we, but the collective we. So the we who's here today is a PSCCN team, Puget Sound College and Career Network team. The acronym is a reflection of their work. We are a network that supports the King, Pierce, and a little bit of Kitsap County education region around post-secondary readiness. We care deeply about our students and young people who are preparing to go into post-secondary as they transition and as they succeed in post-secondary. We do that through professional learning and resources, coaching and TA through a lot of different ways, piloting different strategies, and then really work at the systems level to do alignment, coordination, and develop partnerships, all towards identifying and removing barriers that are systemic across our region in our education systems. And we commit to removing those barriers, really focusing on the experiences of first generation students from low income backgrounds and students of color, so they can have the opportunity to access and obtain their post-secondary credentials. The small but oh so mighty team behind PSCCN, I think all of us are on the line today, so I'm going to have them really quickly unmute themselves and share just like a quick hello and introduce themselves on the line. So first we have Naveed.
Good afternoon, everybody. Naveed Badri, PSCCN manager, and supporting our outreach and our engagement work for Promise.
Thanks, Naveed. Next, do we have Christian on the line?
Yeah, hi, everybody. My name is Christian Granlund, manager at Puget Sound College and Career Network for a little over a year and a half now, pushing 2 years, and I've been helping support some of the data development work, as well as supporting some of the program development.
Awesome, thanks, Christian. And I am Mercy Daramola, interim director. I've been with our group since 2018, really supporting Promise and all of our work in different ways. I went by picture order, so Dinda.
Hi, my name is Dinda Davis. I'm the program coordinator for PSCCN, and I support the program with some of the financial aid and some of the communications that goes out about the projects that we do on our team.
Thanks, Dinda. And finally, Leela.
Hi, I'm Leela Christ. I am the other program coordinator for PSCCN, and I work a little bit more internally on budget projects and closely with Dinda.
Awesome, thanks. So many of you know our team is expanding, and we are excited to be able to hopefully share soon more information on our director and the 2 other roles that we have recently started hiring for in anticipation for our upcoming work. But this team that's here is phenomenal, and I'm excited for you all to hear from them in different ways today. So what is King County Promise? So I'm not assuming that folks got a chance to see the video that we shared, but we did share a video earlier this week as an intention to have an evergreen way for you to get a sense of what King County Promise is. We're going to go through a little bit of a recap because we want to make sure that folks understand the world in which King County Promise is swimming in, as we get a chance to dive a little bit deeper into the what, the how, the who, the when, and the why. So what is King County Promise? It is a regional approach that we're taking to create a system that's perfectly designed to get the results that we want. So we know that this future system that we want for our students and young people when it comes to post-secondary access, to getting to their post-secondary credentials, is one that's equitably funded, that supports that are targeted to them and their needs wherever they are, if they're coming from community or if they're currently in schools. The pathways that they get to their post-secondary dreams are coordinated, that it's centered in the student and follows them where they need, where they are and with what they need, and is accountable. And I realize I am not, so that we want this, our systems to be a future system that we're designing that has equitable funding, as I mentioned, as targeted support. The pathways for students and young people are coordinated, student-centered, in our approach, and that we have accountability. I think one thing that we are talking about a lot in the King County Promise Development is our students are fine. And so we think about the systems around them that we want to make sure are move out the way or move in ways that support our students. So that's really when we think about accountability. And we're looking towards the results that make sure that our students can earn post-secondary credential and close opportunity gap. Our goal is 70% by 2030 as a statewide goal. And that's really what we're tracking towards. So over time, King County Promise has been influenced by a lot of people. Many of you, or some of you who are on the line today and may watch the recording. So I just want to stop again and honor and pause and just say so much appreciation, gratitude for the many people who have shared their thought partnership, their leadership, their engagement, their advocacy, their feedback and more to help us to where we are with King County Promise. And so here you see a partial list, which represented students, community-based organizations, education districts, colleges, and more. And so we have created a collective vision, the we, the King County Promise Development community over time, which is fourfold. One, that all youth of color and other historically underserved young people can receive high quality support to choose, pursue, and succeed in their post-secondary paths. We're looking at for our students, that's what we hope for them. For our systems, we're looking to build substantial capacity across K-12 and higher education and communities to ensure more equitable support. A key component of King County Promise that we're really excited about is that we will honor the role the community-based organizations play in providing supports alongside and specific to students as they're transitioning to. So King County Promise looks at that capacity as well. And then the third part is making our institutions and how they can make some significant improvements to coordinate, align, and simplify the journey to completion for our students and young people. And then finally, King County Promise is not intended to be a really fun party we have for the next 15 years where the funding is here. But instead, King County Promise is intended to be a long-term, sustainable strategy that can be demonstrated to Washington State as with the programming, evidence-based practices, and staffing levels that are needed to achieve high post-secondary enrollment and success rates. Our mission, in order to achieve the vision we just talked about, is to have districts, CTCs, and CBOs supported by PSCCN to work in partnership to ensure that King County students and young people can obtain post-secondary credentials through shared strategies, data, staff, and funding, with a focus on racial equity, continuous learning, and implementing system change in order to create a sustainable, comprehensive, post-secondary access and success system that's highly supported, equitable, and accessible. I appreciate King County Promise not being something that's a simple one-stop shop or like one approach to really addressing our system, because there's a lot of different entry points into supporting students and young people, and King County Promise intends to work at the different levels by thinking about a student level goal and a system level goal. As I mentioned earlier, our goal is to increase post-secondary attainment by age 26 of King County Promise served youth and young people to 70%, with no gap in attainment rates between our prioritized young people and their peers. And our system level goal is that our K-12 districts, post-secondary institutions, and community organizations across King County can collaborate to create a cohesive, equity-focused P316 educational system that supports post-secondary success for young people. And how we do that? In broad strokes, we'll go a little bit more in detail a little bit later, but in broad strokes, for our students, they will see and experience collaborative advisors in high school, CTC, and community organizations. They will also receive equity stipends when they're community technical college. Our staff, new Promise dedicated staff will provide coordinated post-secondary advising to students and young people at high quality ratios so that the student has an ability to be really known and connected to the staff. There's professional development on an ongoing basis for our professionals who will be supporting students and young people so they can be supported to thrive, so they can support our students to thrive. And then common advising resources, contents, milestones, and more that allows us to have a baseline of excellence across the region. And then our systems and partners at the Promise leadership level for both our partnership and then with PSCCN as well, that we are able to coordinate and participate in leadership groups so that we can make sure that advising is happening, ongoing assessment, continuous improvement. We're going to share data and then really making sure that the financial tracking. So we know that there's ability to be able to use the new funding through Promise, but also we want to make sure that that funding finds sustainable homes. So beyond the 15 years of the Promise life cycle, this work can continue. That's another part of what we will be doing as far as Promise strategies. Those partnerships are then supported by PSCCN and DCHS, which is our initial major funding partner. Each partnership will have 4 entity types who will receive direct funding as part of a partnership, and then will be supported for the TA support and the programmatic implementation by King County or by PSCCN. Our goal is to start small and grow throughout all of King County, so that all King County districts and community technical colleges have Promise partnerships and are supported by the different leadership bodies, as you might see below. And King County Promise, the first phase of our programming, is going to go from 2022 fall of next year to 2024. Our goal is to deploy $12.7 million in PASTA funds, serving approximately 12,000 students and young people, and infusing about 60 new advising staff per year across K-12, CBO, and CTCs. Fun stuff. And now I'll turn it over to Naveed to talk about who King County Promise is for.
Thank you, Mercy. Appreciate it. Hello, everybody. Yeah, so in this conversation that we're having, really the key and the heart of Promise is really the audience of young people that we will be engaging with and will benefit from these services. Next slide, please. So our exclusive focus, and like I said, the heart of Promise is the focus on our priority population. So that being youth of color, youth from families at below 200% of the federal poverty level, youth who identify as LGBTQ+, youth who experience homelessness or foster care, youth with disabilities, or other young people who have been historically underserved in King County, age 26 and under. And that, is broken up into different groups of education and educational attainment, one being kind of high school students, the other being CTC students, and then very importantly too, opportunity youth and working young people who may not currently be out of school or maybe during that transition, but also still deserve support to be able to get re-engaged in a meaningful way. Next slide, please. So some of our eligible partners for this process are 4 different institution types that are essentially eligible to come together in partnership to serve the Promise priority population that I just mentioned. First of which is K-12 districts, and that's all public K-12 districts in King County and any King County charter schools serving students in 9th through 12th grade. Second of which is K-12 and CTC students serving CBOs. That's any nonprofit currently serving King County high schools or CTC students with college access and or support services. Another category being the opportunity you're serving CBOs. So also CBOs, but it's serving opportunity youth in this case. Any nonprofit serving King County opportunity youth, those, like I mentioned, who are disconnected from schools with college access or support. And then finally, CTCs, as I mentioned, that being our public 2-year colleges in King County. And like I mentioned before, really the partnership is a huge piece of this, and having to apply as partners is a focused way to share in a group on how best to support young people. And each entity within a partnership will receive direct funding too. So next slide. Can you go back? I'm sorry. So what's new with King County Promise? So, King County Promise has been informed by all of our post-secondary partners, whether that be K-12, CTC, Opportunities, CBO, and there are a lot of areas in Promise that reflect some of the best practices and learnings that we've done in our engagement previously, but also some new elements that are part of KCP that are unique to King County Promise. Next slide. So some of the strategies and kind of what's new from the student level it's connected advising staff in and out of school through K-12 and CTC, and support transition from K-12 out of school into community college and into CTCs. While this is being done too, there's a very intentional way and a more connected way that Promise can help support this piece. Another piece is a unique piece is an equity stipend. That's a $1,000 non-tuition grant for CTC students to help support with whatever they deem is important to them. The next piece is the staff piece, strategies for staff. Some new areas that implementing here are with K-12, CTC, and CBO staff, really this collaborative advising and programming support by shared data, where folks can kind of track common milestones and use it to help with advising and support. The next piece is the professional development, really just an ability to learn and share common strategies and approaches with Promise partners and with each other to help best support students and needs and everything that's coming up. The third being common advising resources, and that's really shared access to high quality resources that can be shared across the region to best support our young people. Some of the areas in the systems and our partners that are new and unique to this process are additional funding to hire Promise advising staff. One of our core tenets of Promise is to be able to hire more capacity and more staff to help support young people. The next piece is partnership supports, and that is through support through PSCCN and just ways to help encourage collaborative leadership, ongoing data and assessment, and provide that technical assistance. The third piece too, and Mercy mentioned this earlier, is assessment and continuous improvement, and really looking and tracking data, understanding kind of what works as the process goes along, and looking for really iterative ways, and looking at different inquiry circles to come together to determine what areas are working and what areas need to be improved, and to be able to kind of look at deeply and look at the root of issues that our students are facing, and how this program can help best support that. And then the fourth piece there is shared data tracking, similar to kind of what we talked about before, really just a way to encourage and ground Promise work across systems, so that advisors and staff can access and share data effectively. And then this last piece with the system is the financial commitment, and that being a financial match from our CTC and K-12 partners. And it's definitely something unique as well that is new to Promise. But those are some aspects there. And the next piece here, I'll turn it over to Mercy Braley to talk about why King County is important, and why King County Promise is important.
Thanks, Naveed. So I'm assuming, but I'm going to verify, that folks understand that supporting students and young people to get into post-secondary, and not just into, but through successfully, is important. But just to make sure that we're all on the same page about why it's important, we're going to talk you through some data points. So hold on to your hats, because here we go. So we want to pause and acknowledge that King County Promise started in development since back in 2017. So at that point, a lot of things were different in our education systems, in our world, really, but not quite for student outcomes. So Promise started there, and here we are now, as I mentioned, a year plus into COVID-19, and we're seeing the impact of students who are able to enroll in post-secondary after high school by some of the characteristics of the high schools nearby. So this came from a National Student Clearinghouse research report from 2020. And if you can see on the slide, for students who are in schools that are in the greener ones that are either higher poverty or have students who are from lower income backgrounds, there's an increased decrease of students who were actually able to enroll in college after high school. And as opposed to fall of 2019, the year before, where although there's variation, it was not as stark. And so sharing this data point as well as this next one for the difference in students completing financial aid from 2021 to 2020. And you see the decrease of up to 14% for most districts around King County. And so saying that not to put blame on students for not enrolling in post-secondary, because a lot has changed in the world for a lot of people. So the idea of going to college has really changed drastically over the last year and a half. What college means, accessibility to it, affordability to it have always been questions and concerns. And as you all who are on the line know, the disparities that were already there continue to be exacerbated by a lot over the as we see the impact of COVID-19. And so as we think about where we are currently, these next few slides talk about why we saw the need for King County Promise specific approach, which is looking at advisors supporting young people in collaboration across K-12, CBO, and CTCs. This data point came from CCR's phenomenal research and evaluation of students and young people, and asking them what's been helpful about learning about college. Students who are, all of these students were first generation, and those who are students of color had an outsized number who said, I learned about college from folks in schools. There's also still students who are white also say they learn about college from folks in schools, but the impact of having advisors or people who are in the school day connect and educate students about post-secondary is so important. And also, credentials matter. So when we say college or around King County Promise, what we mean is any sort of credential after high school. So that can be an associate's degree, a technical degree, a bachelor degree, any sort of degree or credential after high school is important for jobs, period, but also for economic and socio-economic mobility. And currently, 30% of our students region have completed 2-year, 4-year, or apprenticeship. So that's, again, not a knock on our students, but our systems. Like, what can we do differently so we can support our young people to get to that 70% minimum to be able to get a credential? Our students want to go to post-secondary too. This is another data point from SCCER's work, that 95% of students, when polled, were like, yes, I want to go to post-secondary. So that's not even a question on the table. It's now the question is how. There's also another point that when we think about students, King County Promise also thinks about young people, because Opportunity Youth, those students and young people who are not currently in school, so either in high school or in any sort of post-secondary program, or may have graduated a high school degree or GED, but aren't working in a job that's family wage earning, are considered Opportunity Youth. And there is data shown from local programs that support Opportunity Youth with high intensive navigation supports are able to get them to enroll 3 to 7 times more likely than their peers into post-secondary education. So Seattle Education Access, currently Northwest Education Access, did some research on their approach and strategies, and knowing that that is so critical to get students and young people in. So, but we also know that our community-based organizations don't do their work in silos. They're able to work alongside systems to get students back into. So that's a cool point to share. And this is kind of a little bit of a reflection of where we currently are with our system. So the funding is not necessarily equitable for our students and young people. The activities, you can have some pockets of excellence in different places, or you can have a really dedicated, motivated staff or district or region, but that might not be a consistent experience for students across. And so our hope is to be able to really make sure that's not what we have. That students can have, currently the experience that they may have can be disconnected from going to one district into a post-secondary program in our region. They may not have the same transition experience. These institutions are really working deeply, as they should be, within one institution type, but the ability to support across institution types is something that we're looking for. and accountability, really knowing that it should not be okay that we have students, populations of students over and over and over who are not able to get a credential in our region. We want to make sure that we have accountability where it lies. The folks, we who are at the system level, to do things differently so our students and young people can be the success stories. This is a quick example of a current sample high school in our region that has a median income that's over 100,000, as opposed to another high school that has a median income of about 65,000. And though there's about a 500 student difference, and 50% more students in the second high school are from low-income backgrounds, they still have the same number of advisors, which can be challenging then, as we see that if students are relying on advisors, folks in the school day to support them, they don't have the same access to that information. That will be challenging, but that's just high school. If we think about the ratios when it gets to college or post-secondary, that also gets outsized as well. So the recommended ratio is 1 to 450, but then our local college advisor ratios for general programming is up to 1,500 in different areas, and as low as 800. So we know that that's challenging on both ends. So if students need and do well when they are connecting with folks who know the trajectory well, we want to make sure we can get them that information or that support. We also, as I mentioned, Promise connects with Opportunity Youth. And so we currently, pre-COVID, had about 20,000 Opportunity Youth across the region, but there weren't formal on-ramps to get to post-secondary once they left K-12, even if they had a high school diploma or not. So if students are able to say, hey, I didn't get it, I would like to get back into the system, but I don't know where to go, that's something that King County Promise is like, let's do something about that. And so, how is it going to work? So we know that we're going to be we have advisors, organizations working in partnerships, really focusing on students in high school, opportunity, and more, and in college. How will it work? So we've got, our goal is to not try and solve the whole world tonight. Really, so King County Promise is looking at a 15-year long-term way to think about what are the strategies and approaches that we can take in order to have our high schools and our CTCs and public high schools in partnerships, but also the students are able to access the resources. So first off, we're having a first phase of Promise programming to be able to see what are the Promise approach that we've been in development for the last 3-4 years. What of that works that we know we feel really good about, and then have that first phase of partners. They will then be able to renew a contract for an additional 3 years to go from fall 2022 to 2027. At the same time, as we learn from the first phase of partners, we're going to then have a second phase of partnership, which will start the RFP release fall 2023 for programming to launch in fall 2024. Because Promise is intended to be a learning project or learning approach as well. So we learn and do, both from what is shared from others, from the overarching vision, but also from those who are in the work. The partnership sites, the 4 different institution types that Naveen mentioned, will work together to have at least one of each. So one or more CTC, one or more K-12, or CTC serving a CBO, one or more opportunities serving CBO, and one or more public K-12 district to come together to say, we know these are the students that we're going to serve together in this partnership. And I do also want to pepper in here throughout the presentation that all of this conversation, all this content is a reflection from the deep thought and engagement that we got from partners about how to center the students that we care about, how to think about bringing institutions along, but also challenging ourselves in ways that are good and healthy. And one key design element is making sure that every Promise partnership in our as we start and as we end, we'll make sure that we have opportunity youth at the table, opportunity service youth at the table, so that that's not a forgotten element. And we want to think about the key ways that there are different types of CBOs that that have expertise. So CBOs that support opportunity youth have deep and really thoughtful expertise. So we also want to make sure we don't lose the opportunity, the CBOs that also work with K-12 and CTC youth and young people. And then, as I mentioned before, we have also a significant number of leadership bodies. Is the key partnership element and promise that we don't underestimate, that in order to bring folks together, to have staff that are sharing their best and brightest strategies to support a common group of students, it's going to require a significant level of coordination that some folks are already expert level at, and some folks are going to start beginning the partnership work. So our intent is to have PSCCN really be there to support in the different ways we want to learn at the leadership level what needs to happen across King County Promise, around the region, but also for each specific partnership, how can we make sure that that communication is happening at every level, from advisors to admin to leadership, so that the work continues to support our students' progress. And then PSCCN, we get to be the support for how this whole beautiful project runs, because the role for PSCCN is to ensure this cohesion across the multiple program areas and the different partnerships, and also making sure that we have a clear and consistent focus on addressing the equity gaps. So we don't want to get to the end of Promise, either phase 1 or long-term, and look back and say, oh my gosh, we missed the student population that we really cared about. That's not okay. So we want to make sure that we both lead and are not co-leading, focus on equity gaps and approaches to closing them. And also we have the huge benefit and support of PASA funding. And we also know that that's intended to be a first and leverage to even more funding from private funds and then also other funding sources. So that's the role of PSCCN, is thinking about how do we continue to leverage that. We'll do that through a lot of the work that we currently do as PSCCN, the TA work that we do, supporting partners, thinking about how do we do system improvement alongside programmatic support, looking at data and how we can use data to inform the ways in which we work with students, but also the ways in which we change systems and support staff, communication, advocacy, and then bringing together the different groups to think about how do we continue to support the running of the Promise. So next we have just a little bit of a pause thing about what are we actually hoping to get towards with the outcomes for King County Promise. And so I do want to pause because I know that the chat, maybe it's me, but it seems a little dry. So I don't know if we said it, but if you have questions, please put them in the chat. We're going to have time for Q&A a little bit later on, but I want to make sure that folks have a chance to share any questions that they might have along the way that we'll be able to get to. So some of the outcomes that we have for King County Promise are still some of the elements that we are excited to continue to develop with Promise partners, those who are funded and that will learn over time. But at the high school level, so we're thinking about within initial years of Promise investment, we want to make sure students are receiving high support when it comes to their post-secondary, their college going process. There's financial aid completion is a thing and has increased, if not at the level that we hope, 80%. We also look for an increase in post-secondary enrollment. So period, our students actually enrolling, that's something we're also looking for. And then when students get into college, we want to make sure that students are enrolling via multiple measures and or co-requisite courses. King County Promise will be a success as and when students are not just able to get into college, but they are avoiding the barriers that currently exist, which include going into pre-college courses if they don't need it. And so that's a big component of our outcomes for King County Promise, is making sure students are getting in, but also getting it at the right and the highest level possible. They're earning math and English level courses as early as possible, ideally within the first 45 credits. They can share back with us that the support that they're receiving is high quality, and that their students are actually also persisting and completing. We also don't want students to get in, hang around for the first year, 90 credits, and say, it's not for me. We want to make sure students are supported well and actually able to complete a post-secondary credential. At the system level, we want to make sure that the coordination of our college and career systems is high quality and improved, that there's curriculum that's shared and cohesive, that our partnerships at the CBO and the school level is integrated and well coordinated, that students in their senior year can receive academic support, that there's coordination between our education systems as well, that our schools, high schools have that college going culture that is a common phrase and is a common approach, but we really have that really being consistent across our schools. And then we also have course placement and transcript access to allow for a really high quality placement for students and young people. And finally, our overarching long-term goal is to demonstrate to Washington State that the promised models and strategies and outcomes can be sustained and replicated across the state, because it won't be fine. Again, at the end of 15 years, we look around and King County is hustling and bustling with all these students who have post-secondary credentials. But if you step foot into another county, then that's not a thing. So we want to make sure that we can prove to Washington State that what we are doing at King County Promise builds on existing work and also can be replicated across the state, so that it's something that can sustain beyond both in our region, but across the state. So I'm going to pause there before going on and see if there's any questions or thoughts from folks before we go into a little bit more detail on the Promise strategy. So I see a question from Rachel. Are Promise sites actual physical sites, or is it a partnership and data and resource sharing among the various CBOs, K-12 schools, and other stakeholders? Yes, I would say they can be physical sites depending on how CBOs and districts or colleges decide to share a space. So that is something that can be up to Promise Partners to decide. But the core of it is the partnerships and then the sharing among the stakeholders. Naveen, any thoughts?
No, I agree. I agree with your answer for that. Yeah, I think the core piece is the partnership and the ability to, I think, streamline and with the efficiency of that to better help serve students. So that's a great question. And you know, in general, our participant count right now is, I think, right at that sweet spot where if folks feel empowered, they can definitely feel free to unmute themselves and ask a question too. So chat's great, but if you would prefer to ask and unmute yourself, feel free to do that.
I will ask another question.
Go ahead.
So I'm here representing King County Library System, and I will say that we typically don't enter into many data sharing partnerships where data sharing is a part of the partnership. The exception to that would be our student accounts program, but that data is very limited and shared in a specific way. Can you give some examples of the types of data that folks are hoping to collect and share? Because that will definitely inform our decision about like the level to which we could potentially participate.
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually a big component of Promise, because some of the data that we're hoping to share and track are some basic things that would be new from Promise. So the student agreed to be a part of the Promise program, agreed to have their information be shared between the Promise High School where they may start, and then any participating Promise CBO and or post-secondary institution. But then we also want to be able to track things like, has a student signed up for FAFSA and completed FAFSA? Some of that will be self-report from students. Some of that would be maybe integrated in from the different data sources from our districts and colleges. But the core of Promise as an advising model requires that our advisors around students know them before and after they've come. So ideally, the college staff and college advisors can know about a student who intends to come to that post-secondary institution before they usually do, so they can be able to do that outreach and support and engagement. And then our CVOs are able to have effective data to be able to say, hey, I'm a promise advisor at high school A, and I can let my CVO advisor know, hey, this student's going to come to you after school and they need to do these types of things, and we can track them in a shared data system. I'm going to share a little bit more about the data system and moving forward, but that's a key component of promise that we do want to have some rigor around, because that allows us to not have to learn each time what do students need. Instead, we already know. We can share that and move alongside or ahead of the student.
Great question. Mercy, there's another question from Dave. How would advisors funded by the grant be different than existing college advisors?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So one of the key differences is that the promise advisors funded by Promise would be required to, or would be working directly with the Promise cohort. And they would have the specific deliverables of making sure students fill out Promise pledge forms, fill out the key milestones that are associated with Promise. And they're not intended to be brand new milestones. Like, we're not going to say that if a student eats a chocolate popsicle on the third day of their senior year of high school, they're more likely to go to college. No. So what we're doing is saying that we know that there are standard things that are already in our system or in our knowledge. And what we're doing is we're standardizing the things that aren't current standard right now. And so a Promise advisor would be required to track and support students in doing that at a higher ratio, though. So the ratio is 1 to 100 for Promise students to Promise staff. And the Promise advisor, though, would still also be able to do building-wide support or school-wide support. So we'll go a little bit more into that a little bit later in the presentation, but there are ways that the new Promise advisors can add capacity to the department or the school that they are embedded in, but the primary care and focus is on Promise student, and also communicating with their partners either in the CVO or K-12 or CTC partnership.
Great question so far. Thank you. Any other questions in the chat or verbal questions before we move on to the next part of this presentation?
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to reshare screen again and pick it back up, actually in data land. So as I mentioned a little earlier, thanks for that question around data. So not the dark horse, but like the hidden kind of like behind Promise is figuring out a way that we can have our students, the folks who are student facing, and then the folks who are around everyone, so the admin level folks, be able to have a way to track and access data that allows for support for high quality advising for students and young people that can also scale and that will grow with the needs of Promise. So what we have here is the approach for King County Promise that will have for students at a learner record that empower students and allow to organize data for real-time activation. So a student will be able to, at full scale and full strength of the Promise data sharing approach, we'll be able to say, hey, I filled out my FAFSA today, or this is my college application I submitted, done. And that will be in a shared data system that the advisor, again, who shares across the CTC, CBO, and K-12 partnership, will be able to see for real-time progress monitoring. So they can be able to say, oh, great, Ashley, our student who's in high school, filled out her FAFSA and is intending to go to our Promise partner college. And so that partner college is then dinged and said, hey, or pinged and said, hey, this student intends to come to your college next fall. Let's start the conversation about making sure that there's a warm handoff there, making sure the student is on track to fill out the milestones in high school, but also prepared well for post-secondary. And then that's really the advisor support. And at the admin level, it will allow for partners across Promise, within Promise partnerships, and then PSCCN across the different Promise partnerships to be able to see our progress towards meeting our student outcomes. Are students able to fill out FAFSA because there's higher quality higher student to staff engagement? Are we tracking the right milestones that lead to the long-term success for students in post-secondary credential attainment and more? And the goal, so then the way that this would work is that a student will be able to complete a pledge form that allows us to then have rosters and cohorts established. The district CBOs and CTC share student promise related data, and then we're able to aggregate that data and then use it in an ongoing way in a Promise CRM. For Promise students, so stepping into the mindset of who am I and what's new for me for Promise students. I just want to make sure we dive a little bit more into the detail. So we want to make sure that as we think about the role of Promise advisors and supporting students, that we're clear that because a lot of the work that Promise advisors could and would be doing aligns with strategies that are already in place, the goal is to really think about how can we have a pocket of really highly supported students and young people in each of our systems, but also use that advising capacity to add capacity support within the school or district or department that they're in. So in high school, for K-12 students at King County Promise High School, Promise advisors will be able to provide whole building support to 10th and 11th graders in the Promise prioritized population. But then there's a cohort of students that will then fill out the pledge form, which then allows us to track their data and then able to start that warm handoff by fall of the 12th grade year, so that students are able to be supported all throughout the start of the financial aid process, the college application process, and more throughout. For opportunities and young people, those who will be enrolled in an alternative program or re-engagement program will then complete a Promise pledge in order to also allow us to track the data and their engagement. Again, not currently employed and do not already hold it to a 4-year degree. And then when in CTC, there's 2 opportunities for students. So one, students who are coming from either that Promise Partner High School or Promise Partner CBO who are opportunity youth that are part of the Promise population that will enroll and like welcome in. You know about the rate and then you can come on in. And then knowing that for our CTCs that would start Promise year 1 with programming, and then also over time, if there's capacity, can also enroll students newly into Promise on the CTC side, as long as they fit within the Promise prioritized population. So a student may not have enrolled from a partner high school, but fits the demographic, fits the demographic, and the college may say, we want to make sure we can enroll this group of students as well. Oh, sorry. Let me see. Stop my share. And then so what's required and what's new for students? So our goal in doing this is to be able to have folks to think through some of the questions that we know we've heard that like what's new? Like what can I expect if I were a student? What can I expect with advising? And so the first part is this is what is required in Promise. This is what we're saying we want to try. This is our approach. But then there's a significant part of Promise that we know our partners, those folks who apply and then are funded by Promise, either our phase 1 groups or over time, we will learn from you. So we want it to be a 2-way learning street. So the first part of Promise is what's required is that students sign a Promise pledge and that they will receive CTC placement support if they intend to go to CTC placement, but then also have summer transition support no matter where they choose to go. So Promise doesn't require a student who signs up to be a Promise pledge. They don't have to go to the partner CTC. But for our opportunity youth, it's very similar. They get the Promise pledge that they are required to do, also CTC placement support, and then college transition support. And then for students in college, they receive, again, Promise, transition support, CTC placement support, but then they also get financial aid support because they're now college students, making sure that they have access to the financial resources to keep them on campus and engage in schools, and also equity stipend, that $1,000, they'll also be able to receive that. The part that we know, we want our partners to tell us. So if partners in phase one will indicate in when they apply, like, here's what we want you, here's our approach to doing that is, how does the Promise baseline of strategies and support, could that integrate with other services on the high school campus? So those folks who are doing great work around High School Beyond Plan already, who may have other programs on campus, might say, we want to take this Promise baseline and integrate it with our other approaches here, along with other advising curriculum, and then some of the delivery method and frequency. We'll have some baseline things again too, but we want a chance to learn from our initial Promise phase one folks. Here's the approach it will take so that we can continue to grow and iterate over time. For opportunity youth, very similar too. So know that there's many different approaches CBOs take to supporting students with the caseload advising. So that's another element that we are excited to have folks share with us so we can learn what can that approach look like. And then finally, for our CTC students, so some of the career exploration, how can that be integrated with Promise? The intake and enrollment, those are whole other systems that Promise isn't promising to change, but we want to learn from you. How can using the Promise approach be integrated into the other approaches or course that you already have, alongside some of the retention advising content as well. And then I just want to pause there and let folks kind of read the slide and see if there's any questions that are coming up so far. No questions? Okay. You're doing a phenomenal job. I guess that's good. Okay, so thinking about the staff. So super excited about how we can think about the role of staff, the Promise advisors, as just really core to the Promise approach. So what's required and what's new for Promise advisors are the collaborative advising through enhanced case management and tracking resources. So making sure that as CBO staff, our K-12 staff and our districts and our college staff know one another, connect with one another, have ways to share data and communicate, support students and more. They all have the requirement to make sure students complete the Promise Pledge so that the groups of students who are intended to be served, we can actually track the data and support them in a collaborative way. And also there's a professional learning series that is a reflection of some of the best and brightest that we've seen across the region. We're really thinking about how can we make sure that a reality that I've seen that I know is great for students, that you might have an advisor who is like super proactive, who goes above and beyond to like learn and connect with different people and to really infuse that approach into supporting students. We want to make sure that's a standard thing, that students shouldn't get lucky to have a high quality advisor. We want to make sure we support high quality advisors. So that's something that PSCCN will be putting on so that advisors will have on a regular basis a chance to connect with other advisors in the Promise programs, be able to say like these strategies are working, they're not working. Here's more support that we need. Be able to learn best practices, but also what I'm also jazzed about is this opportunity for us to think about de-siloing at the advisor level. So how often can we make sure that advisors are able to hear what's going on in the post-secondary systems that they're sending their students to, and vice versa. Our community technical college advisors able to hear what's going on for our students in high school. What should we be thinking about and preparing for as the students are preparing to transition? And our CBO advisors are able to be a true part of the ecosystem and be able to help and provide input. I'm pumped about this a lot because as we've seen a lot of that really do well with CCLI, for example, in our region, and opportunity to do even more and embed the post-secondary staff and perspective in is something I'm pumped about. But then for high school advisors, so they'll have to make sure students sign a Promise Pledge. They'll have to have dedicated time for college application and financial aid completion in the school day. So making sure they're working with students to do that. Also, some of the general college and career advising that we see currently, that's integrated in their work. And then what will be done together, though, is the tracking some grade specific college and career tasks. Again, we won't be pulling things from out of thin air, really thinking like, what are the things that we know are the best practices, and making sure that we track that across the region, and then making sure students fill out financial application. Opportunity youth advisors, really making sure students are supporting transition, and then CTC student advisors, post-secondary transition support, and then the equity stipend. What we still know, we want to learn from folks, and folks who are, as they apply and then as they actually implement, are how can we make sure that we have a way to both represent and measure culture responsive, trauma informed, but also student celebratory approaches of promise. That's really infused in different ways, but we want to make sure that we're learning from the advisors who are actually doing that, what way that we can keep that at the heart of it, so that we're not talking to students in ways that are demeaning, that we're continuing to be asset-based, believing in the best of our students and looking at our systems in curious ways and not the other way around. But also how we can incorporate promise supports into some of the meaningful things that's already happening on campuses and in schools. And then we also want to learn, like, what are some of the approaches to collaboration amongst the staff? We have ideas, we have an approach, but we also are going to look to our partners to help inform what that will look like in a way that is high quality. So again, I'm going to pause here and see what questions come up from there. It's quiet in the chat. I just want to make sure that my mic is on and folks are actually hearing me. Okay. My mic is on. Okay, great. So no questions right now? All right. Okay. Great. So I think we'll kind of maybe pause there and transition to what's next for King County Promise. So let's see. I think there's a question in the chat. Okay, it's being informative. Okay, great. All right, so no questions is actually a good thing. That's great. It's been a while since we presented, so just want to make sure that what we think it is right. Okay, so then what's next for King County Promise? So as mentioned, we're here. We're like in preparation for launching phase 1. And I do want to make sure I talked about it a little bit, but there has been a ton of work put into this. And some of you on the line and some of you watching recorded, thank you. So the PSCCN team of 2017, none of whom is on the line right now, thanks you all, because we started with background research and student and parent focus groups. And then we worked to develop an initial program plan, with students, K-12, post-secondary, and many other folks. And then we're able to advocate for and secure funding for Promise from King County Council with the PASTA funds. And then we spent time over the last couple of years really refining the program elements and working with King County to think about what does that look like? How can we make this actually fly? Like some of the thinking around implementing over phases, like that's where we started doing a lot of that work and really thinking about how to really incorporate the Promise approach over time. And then we're here now where we really want to make sure that folks are understanding what the phase 1 launch will look like. And then we have the first phase, which programming will start next fall 2022, and through 2024. But then we have 2024 and beyond. So 2034 is the end of our the funding from King County Council from PASTA. But again, this is intended to be something that's sustainable, so that we have a chance to really. So it's intended to be sustainable, so that we don't say 2034 is here, and then, oh no, students are kind of out of luck. But instead, we want to be able to say we absolutely were able to make something happen that is that students can experience no matter where they are in King County or the state. And then finally, one moment. Okay. So we are here. So so now through fall of this year is our goal is to increase regional awareness and preparation for phase 1 of King County Promise programming. So part of the awareness is our info sessions and engagement sessions that we're doing now and next week. And then we'll have, and talk a little bit more later in the presentation about this, but phase 1 readiness workshop sessions. Although the RFP will be a competitive RFP delivered by King County. And we also want to make sure that folks who apply are prepared to apply, so you're not surprised by what's in the RFP. So our team will be making sure that there's an opportunity for engagement to learn more about how do I prepare for this element? How do I prepare for this element? How do I prepare for this element of promise? That's our commitment and our what we'll be doing this fall. And then from fall of this year, once RFP is open to winter 2022, it'll be the partnership RFP selection process. Again, through DCHS King County, but there will be TA support available, trained by PSCCN, folks who will be able to know the different elements and support folks as you are in the actual application process. And then the fun begins. So our goal is to then winter of next year to fall of next year, work with the partners who are funded to then really refine some of the key elements of the programming that we'll need to have funded partners available to do things like how do we make the DSAs move forward that you may see or that you prepare for? What does programming look like, hiring staff and more? So there will be a significant support after the RFP process is over for folks who are actually funded to prepare for a successful launch. And then I will pass it over to Naveen.
Mercy, and thanks everyone for sticking with us to that presentation. It's a lot of information, and I just wanted to shout out Elisa, who mentioned that taking some time to process kind of all that information, I think is super important. So there'll be opportunities to do that in a second. There'll be opportunities to do that towards the end, like a more formal Q&A that we could that we're going to plan on starting. But then also we'll send out a follow-up survey email to folks too with these slides as well. So folks will be able to kind of see and be able to maybe have a little bit of time to process and then share their thoughts and their feedback and their questions there too. So I appreciate that. Thanks for calling that out. So in this portion here, I'm going to post a link for the group. We really just want to take a moment. We've done a lot of talking. We want to start hearing from you about this process. We have two really main questions that we want to ask, and we want to kind of do a little bit more engaging in the sense of us doing it in a Jamboard. And the two questions that we're curious about and would love your feedback on are, what support and prep do you need to apply to Promise, kind of after everything that you've heard and everything that some of the elements that exist? And the second question being, what strategies are you already implementing that are aligned with Promise? And this Jamboard here, I put the link in the chat, and essentially take about 7 minutes. There's a icon on the left. You can see is like a little sticky note where you can go in from the first slide and the second slide to be able to kind of put your thoughts and your answers and your feedback on these two different types of questions. And we'll take about 7 minutes. Screen off is totally fine. And we will kind of come back and the folks can kind of share out kind of what they thought about and what they shared. And I don't believe we need to do a raised hand in Zoom. I think we're at a good number where folks can just unmute themselves. But yeah, so I can share my screen really fast, just to make sure folks are aware of how to navigate Jamboard. But essentially, this is the first slide with the first question. Oops. This is the second slide with the second question. And really, this sticky note here, you can go in and put your responses. And it's kind of free form. There's no format to it, however folks feel comfortable, and folks are already putting it on. So let's take about 7 minutes. So we will come back at about 52. I will alert folks, but feel free to use this time to jump on the Jamboard and let us know your thoughts, and we'll jump back in. Thank you. And please do let me know as we're taking this time right now, these 7 minutes, to let me know if you need any technical assistance too with Jamboard. All right, folks, thank you so much for your feedback. I thought we could jump right in, and if folks want to share out anything that they put down, they want to kind of share out to the group or elaborate further. We open that up to everybody, so feel free to jump on in for either question.
I can speak. I'll jump right in. So Elisa Guayo Munoz from Kent School District. And first, I just wanted to thank you and Mercy for having this session and for all of the information. And again, just wanted to reiterate what I put in the comments section or in the chat. Social or media terms, right? Just time. I'm the one that put just time to like sit down and process. Especially right now with returning to school. Today was our first day of school, and you know, it's kind of where people's minds are at and trying to, yeah, like I don't even know how to put it into words. And so just wanted to be here and thank you both for the information. And I know I missed some at the start, and so I'm definitely going to take time to just go through and come up maybe with my list of questions. And then the other sticky note was just maybe hopefully being able to spend some time with you both on an individual basis. I know you're probably trying to avoid as much as that by having these sessions, but I think that personal touch where we can have true and honest conversation amongst ourselves, I think will go a long way in terms of all stakeholders being comfortable and confident in proceeding forward in this. And so time and then future conversation is what I would say we would need for us.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, I completely agree with you, and yeah, I would love to have more of a personal touch and an individual kind of relationship to in regards to this and how we can help best support. So definitely more to come with information and time as well. And best of luck to you all for starting today. Congratulations. And also like a shaky, you know, it's a lot, there's a lot going on. Shaky congratulations to you. So thank you. Other folks?
Well, folks think of their questions or like the comments that they want to highlight, I will just share one last part from the slide, the PowerPoint, which is our upcoming dates. Maybe, do you want to go over these?
Yes, sure. Sorry, I was muted.
Okay.
Yeah, so we had discussed, you know, these this being info session and some feedback sessions, but kind of the next piece for this is our readiness work sessions, and this is really, you know, intended to be for folks interested in applying for RFP. There shouldn't be a question mark there. Apologies. But really join us for these optional work sessions for interested partners to learn more about, for example, budgeting, student outcomes, partnership, and more to prepare for applying for the RFP. And to get back to Elisa's point, an opportunity to build stronger bonds with us and folks involved in Promise, but also another opportunity to get more specific around certain aspects of Promise that folks who are applying for the RFP would be interested in. We have some tentative dates and times set. We will follow up with an email with the exact times and the exact pieces for that to everyone in this group and everyone else who got the initial communication. But for now, there's 5 sessions, as you can kind of see on the screen right there. But we will follow up in an email to send you the meeting details for that, the Zoom link and everything else. And we encourage you to join.
Yeah, and it's really alongside your point, Lisa. We are not ignorant, and we're trying to be responsive to the fact that there's a lot going on for partners who may have been a part of King County Promise heard about it, but it couldn't, in some ways could be the best time, but also like the hardest time to try and apply for this programming. So our goal is to be able to be as available as possible, not just to talk and see your great faces on Zoom, but also to make sure you feel prepared for the different elements of Promise and how to reflect that in any application. Because our goal is that even though it will be a competitive process and not everyone will be able to be selected the first go around, our goal is to have about 2 to 4 partnerships. We do still want there to be high quality applications and to be able to be as supportive before the application is open as possible. So these sessions, and then as demand or as needed, we may be able to add more if folks are like, we actually want to have 2 sessions on this topic or more. But any of the thoughts that you put on the Jam board about support that you all might need, that would help us understand what more support we can offer before the application actually opens.
Great. Do you want to go to the next slide? So open up the space. Folks have any questions at all? Again, a lot of processing needs to take place. Will be opportunity to kind of be able to do in the form of a survey too, but we wanted to take the time and open the space to answer any questions, get your thoughts about kind of what you heard today in the process, and just have an open dialogue. We'd love that. So folks can feel free to put it in the chat. Feel free to kind of jump in. It's up to folks, whatever you feel comfortable. But we're here to do our best to answer your questions.
Thanks, Lisa. So pulling from what I see on the Jam board about supportive practice, it could be kind of questions or contact persons or contact people. And that will be folks on the PSCCN team, and we'll share that on the next slide as far as who to reach out to. Timeline with important dates and deadlines. Yeah, absolutely. As the RFP process, we're in development of that with King County now. And so when we have all that information, our goal is to get that out to folks to be able to help prepare for that. The guideline support sessions, glad we're right on board with that. So that the previous slide, which shows our programming through September and support the September, that's our support session. And then the qualifications regarding K-12, CBL serving orgs. We can make sure that the slides that have that information are more detailed. That's they are at a higher level, but we can add more of that detail. It's definitely a part that we already have.
I have a quick question. So for the sessions that you have coming up, I don't have, I got this invite from someone that works with our partnership with King County. So I was just wondering if I would be able to add my email so that I can get the invites or the links to those sessions or whatever it's available.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's we have a couple more slides and we're going to go over how to be in best contact with us and how to join up for our newsletter, for example. And anyone who registered for this event too will get a follow-up email and then ways to get in touch with us. But that's great. We would love to add you onto the team.
Thank you.
Okay, I see a question. If a working draft of the RFP can be made available before finals and confirmed and published, inform preparing for application. Federal agencies often release such provisional ones to improve the quality of comments and feedbacks received. Yeah, in some ways that is, so we are working with King County, and so they're public, and so there's some aspects of the RFP process that are, there's some aspects of our RFP process because it's competitive, they're not able to do that. But what we are, with the application prep sessions and also with the King County Promise Info sessions, what we're hoping to present is that there isn't going to be anything much different. There shouldn't be anything new in the RFP, essentially, is our approach with this awareness. So the aspects of what is required, some of the more detail that we'll share out in our September prep sessions, that is intended to be the closest representation to what you will see in the RFP, to be able to honor both the process for the competitive process, but also education for partners. But I can also take that question back to see if King County has ever done that approach with a provisional or working draft, and see if that is something that we can incorporate as well.
Some great question.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions from other folks? Wonderings, thoughts? Well, I'm sure questions will arise too as folks kind of take a look at these slides again, maybe think about it, some afternoon tea. But in general, there are going to be a lot of different opportunities to be in touch with us and contact us. So this will not be the last time you'll be seeing us. There's a lot of different ways you can get engaged with us. The question earlier was about how to get engaged. One way is to sign up for the PSCCN newsletter. I'm hoping one of our folks from our team could throw that in the chat, the link for that, but that will be in the presentation. There are these sessions. So this one being today and the next one being on the 31st from 4 to 6. Again, our hope is to learn a lot from this session and to get your feedback from this session to be able to update the next session and make it as useful as possible for people. So in the spirit of continuous learning and continuous improvement and learning, this is something that our team is practicing as well. Great. Thanks for putting that registration link in there, Leela. And then our phase 1 prep sessions, which we showed you before, which we will make sure we communicate the meeting details to this group and via email. And then your feedback survey, and we'll send that kind of in a follow-up after this with the slides itself. And then just in general, to learn more about King County Promise, PSCCN, and our team, and how to get plugged in, we have a website here that you're more than welcome to visit and let us know kind of your thoughts. So again, just really want to thank everybody for their time today. Busy afternoon, busy week, busy few weeks with schools opening and everything going on. But thank you again for making the time to be here with us today. Again, this isn't the last time you'll see us. Please feel free to contact us. In regards to anything, engagement outreach related, please reach out to me, Naveed Badri, and nbadri at pscsc.org, and then also with any other general inquiries to Mercy as well. And yeah, we look forward to learning and growing with you all too. And just want to thank everyone for their time. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll be here for a couple minutes if you have any questions you wanna stick around for. But if not, I just appreciate everybody, and I hope you have a good rest of your afternoon.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Dorothy. I think we can stop recording.